Welcome back to another NovNov technical project. This is the seventh, so we're technically like 1 week through NovNov, but today we're going to look at some droplet management tools, both through DigitalOcean and directly through the droplet itself. We're going to start off by SSHing into our droplet. I'm going to go in on the Steve Smith account. So I got to use my password to open up the key so they can log in. And if y'all have been reading through the terminal very closely as we go, you may have noticed this pop up. This is the message saying, hey, you've got another way to manage or access this droplet if you want to enable it. And so it says, activate the web console with systemctl, which is a command that is used to manage system level functions or services. Enable, so turn it on at start, hyphen hyphen now, turn it on at start, but also do it now. Cockpit.socket. So that's the service or the accessibility for the Cockpit service, which is a lot like Windows Server Manager if you're coming from that realm. I'm going to sudo su up to root. If I can remember my password. There we go. Got it on the first try this time. So now we are root at NovNov. You could do this command as sudo, but I'm going to do it under root so that I can track it that way. And we just go ahead and throw that right in there. And no news is good news typically. So Cockpit is now live. But if you don't know what that is and you just turned it on, maybe be a little bit more, um, I don't know, cautious when following videos online because you may have just opened your server up to a little bit of a vulnerability. But we'll get into that later when we talk about the ethical hacking side of things. From this, we're still in the realm of droplet management, so let's go ahead and take a look at Cockpit. Uh, Easiest way to access it is via IP address, but you also have to have a specific port number. Right? And so what that means is that I could take that IP address right there, copy, paste, and try and browse to it. But Cockpit doesn't run on 80 or 443, our standard HTTP and HTTPS ports. It actually runs on 9090. So this socket that we have to use is 161.35.85 for me because that's my IP address. But then you have to add colon 9090 to the end to be able to actually reach it. And it's not a private connection. Oh no, scary bad, right? Not really. If we click into advanced, we can see that the certificate is not trusted by my computer's operating system. This could be due to a misconfiguration or an attacker in the middle. Very scary when they bring that up, right? But let's go ahead and click on the not secure certificate details. And we'll see that it's not secure or not trusted because it is self-signed, issued to NovNov2, issued by NovNov2. Self-signed certificates must always be trusted manually by clicking this button. And now we're getting into the CentOS stream. So I can go ahead and try and sign in as my user account. Hey, I just used a password to access this, didn't I? But didn't we set up SSH keys instead? I wonder, did we also just open up our root account to a potential attack? Because now there is a place that can accept, let me go ahead and log out, root and the root password, if I remember what we set it to. Was it that one? No, so I still don't have that in there. If I go other options, I could choose who to connect to. I could also just be misremembering my root password because we set it very quickly just as a way to level up. But a weird thing is, even if we're in as Steve Smith, turn on administrative access? Sure. What's your password? Congratulations, we just sudoed our entire terminal or our access through this. But tangenting back, we will get deeper into the ethical hacking side, and I'll talk about the SSH keys, root access, user access, and um, our cockpit later. This, though, is more for server management. So we can see our droplets information. I know what it is. I know the host information about it. I can go over here and look at the logs of this system. Oh, and there's so many. It's almost like I have SSH open on the public internet. We can go into networking and we can see the statistics of that, of how it is working. I'm going to spike for a little bit. We can deal with accounts directly on here. I only have root and ssmith. And yeah, we could go ahead and edit our root account directly from here, setting the password. I've seen my keys, I see my login history, services, right? So I can go ahead and maybe I want to add another socket, like I've got my cockpit socket. You can scroll down and see that I've got a bunch of other SSH. I've got syslog going on, systemd. You can also get into some diagnostic reporting, and this is a really neat utility if you are, let's go ahead and run that really quick. Label test or NovNov, and then let's go ahead and run that report. But what I don't actually remember what I was saying because I went off on a tangent. But this is really good for droplet management without having to get into the droplets specifically. If you're managing multiple, you can kind of open them all up on Cockpit and manage them from a central access point. But going back to the idea of this being a little bit like Windows Server Manager, there are also some pretty stark differences. Windows Server Manager can only manage Windows servers, whereas Cockpit can be used in a bunch of different ways, but not very well with Windows servers. We can do a lot of Linux stuff on here. But this report's almost done, so I can kind of show you guys what the diagnostics look like if you were to run one of these for your droplet. Maybe it got to 99% and then it kind of paused for a second. I wonder if it's going to work. Yeah, we'll come back to that. So I did mention that, of course, it was right when I said we were going to go look at it at a different time. I did mention that we could manage a lot of this stuff through DigitalOcean as well. So that is where we're going to go next. If you can see, this actually opened up. Didn't mean to click on that. We downloaded it, but it is a secured one. It is a tar XZ GPG file. So it is archived and encrypted, and so we can't just see it directly. We could download it and work with it, but that is a tangent that we're not going to go off on together. You can go off on that tangent on your own. One of the main differences is between Windows Server and Cockpit Socket is that we can have a terminal right here, and I can sudo su, if I remember my password, to go up to root and have terminal access through my web browser. So this is another way to go about running commands if you needed to without actually getting onto the system or messing with it. That is all Cockpit is. I can go up here. I can add more hosts. That's how I could manage multiple through here. But that is where we're going to tangent off of this for today. So I'm going to log out, go back to my NovNov project, and click into NovNov2. And you can see that you get a lot of similar information, like when we were looking at the networking. So we were looking at our in and out. We get that right here in our bandwidth. We can also see our CPU usage, disk. So there are a lot of utilities just inside of DigitalOcean that you never have to go into a droplet to manage that droplet. We can also go in and take a look at access attempts. So I could launch a console directly from here using our SSH key. So a bit of secure access. Ooh, we failed. Console docs. Let's take a look at why. We do accept. We do have the droplet agent. Console. Interesting. Not a tangent I'm going to run down, but if you are getting a access error on that, you can totally dive down that rabbit hole. Just to see really quick though, something I always check, if droplet access fails to my root account, let's go ahead and try and SSH in from my terminal where I have my keys, and we can see that we still have root access. So, and it brings up our web console that we've got, tells us that it's live, tells us how to get there even. Close out of my connections there. One of the main things that you can do from the DigitalOcean side that I find pretty helpful in the field is backups, right? So you can manage your backups or your snapshots, which are like checkpoints. Both backups and snapshots have their benefits, but a snapshot can cost you money. Not a whole lot, but it can cost you a little bit of money. Um, so that is a good thing to be aware of. Not going to go too deep into the tangents on that today, though. Just when we're talking about server or droplet management, these are really good utilities to be aware of, both Cockpit and the droplet information on DigitalOcean. I'm going to sign back in as my user account really quick. I'm going to go to my terminal, sudo su, systemctl, disable now cockpit.socket, because I don't trust you gremlins on the internet. We are now kicked out entirely, right? I will bring Cockpit back up later when we start talking about the ethical hacking realm, but to use it as a server management or droplet management utility is where you guys should start. Um, Mostly because a recent quote I heard from a security professional at B-Sides was that hacking is just malicious administration. So the more you understand these topics and how to manage servers, the more you can mismanage them to your benefit. But that is all for today's NovNov, plus a little bit of proof of why I don't do No Shave November, because we're on the 7th day of November and it still looks like I just have a bit of scruff. So with that being said, I'll see you guys tomorrow for another one.